victims of state repression. Amarjit Singh and I sat down at a long table, and one of the Sikh prisoners, an older man with grey in his beard, sat down across from us. He was thin, bones stood out everywhere. "I used to be a farmer," he said. "My family was farming for many generations. We are simple people without much education, but we work hard." He glanced at me to see I imagined whether not being educated might affect my estimation of him. "My family was simple too," I said. "They left Germany when they couldn't practice their religion the way they wanted to, and came to Pennsylvania to farm. I was the first member of my family to go to college." At this gesture of empathy, he seemed to relax. He then told a story that I came to see as typical: the Indian Army's attack on the holiest shrine of the Sikhs in 1984, prompting a renewed identification with the faith. A relative who got involved in a militant resistance, repeated harassments, and finally arrested at the hands of Punjab police. I didn't know how to ask about torture, but I had read enough human rights reports to be aware of how frequent it was in that part of the world. "Would it be all right if I asked him about torture?" I asked Amarjit. He nodded. But I hesitated, looking for words, and Amarjit finally jumped in for me. "Were you abused while in police custody?" he asked. The doctor, an honorary reference to me, would like to hear about those experiences so she can put them in her hook. I got ready to write down what he said in my notebook, but at the same time recognized a certain inhumanity in the mere gesture of picking up my pen. I put it down again and shoved my notebook to one side. "First I was stripped naked," the man recounted. "The police officers started shouting questions at me, in very insulting ways," he said. "They were quite drunk." "Were they Hindu or Sikh?" I inquired. "Sikh," he responded, bringing out one of the features of the Punjab problem too easily skimmed over by media centered on communal interrelations conflict. "One of them started hitting me, and he hit me again and again. He started beating me with a nightstick. After a while, when I didn't say anything, they hung me up by the arms, like this." He demonstrated a position I would later know as the airplane, arms pulled up behind to put the strain on the shoulder girdle. In some cases the feet were weighted to pull on the joints even further. I got electric shocks on my head and onto my private parts. I told them I didn't have any information, I didn't know anything, but they kept on shocking me and abusing me with that stick. Amarjit said quietly by my side, "Sometimes they are abused anally too, but they won't talk about it." Amarjit had a medical background, and found it easier than other Sikhs to talk about anatomy. I nodded in response to his comment, banishing the image conjured up by it, and listened as our interlocutor continued. "After that they took me down from there and threw me in a cell. There were 2 other guys there, but no toilet or anything. Just a bucket in the corner, and it was overflowing. One of the guys was badly bruised and he was moaning and groaning, lying on the wet floor. We kept trying to rub his legs. He was in a lot of pain. That night we 3 prayed for hours. We didn't sleep. We just prayed and prayed." "Did you think that you might not survive?" I asked. "No one knows whether they will live or die when they are picked up by police. I put my trust in a Guru, God." He cleared his throat. "Next day I was taken out again and more of the same was done. More the next day. Then they made me sit on the floor and put the roller on me." I later learned what the roller was. A heavy wooden cylinder is rolled across the thighs of a prisoner, weighted by people standing on both ends, to crush and tear the muscles of the upper leg. Months after this interview, I was able to see the results of the roller on the legs of one Sikh, unembarrassed enough to show me. That one also had burns from a hot iron staggered up and down his back and chest. "What were you thinking as you were being tortured? Can you tell me what was going through your mind?" I asked, indelicately. Nothing. My mind was empty. When I thought of something, I only thought to say the name of my God, Aheguru. Again, I later learned how common it was for people under torture to lose all sense of their surroundings, and literally their wits. Elaine Skyrey, who wrote an intriguing book about torture and war called The Body in Pain, pointed out that this fact of radical narrowing of one's world while in extreme pain calls into question the alleged aim of torture, namely, to get information. Even when people do have information to give, they typically lose track of it utterly in the torture situation. The goal of torture therefore must be understood in terms other than the mere acquisition of knowledge, despite the common claim of torturers the world over that is why they torture. After several days of this treatment, some people of my village managed to gather up some money and they demanded my release. I got out and then decided to leave India. But I came to the United States without proper papers and now I am in jail. How long have you been here? I asked. 4 months. Are you being treated all right? I queried. Yes, but suddenly this gaunt survivor was looking away from me, his face contorted with emotion. I hardly dared to ask, but I did. What is it? My wife, I was. Since I have been here I got a letter, she was taken into custody. He couldn't go on. I saw water filling his eyes, and he turned away. Your wife was dishonored? Asked the Margit. It's a euphemism for rape. He nodded, and I watched a tear drop onto his beard. I didn't know whether it was appropriate or not, but I reached across the table and put my hand on his hand. He didn't move it away. Later I would sit through many sessions like this, see many eyes full of tears. A Margit, however hardened to the realities of what he sees as a guerrilla war, became watery quite often. Few words by an ex-member of the Babbar Khalsa in the USA. I always yearned to be a member of the Babbar Khalsa. It was a well-reputed organization, and whenever anybody mentioned the word Babbar I had a throb in my heart, thinking, oh God, can I one day be a Babbar, too? So I always felt proud that in fact I accomplished that goal, that I had found a way to be of service. Looking at my face now, clean-shaven, the way I look, nobody will believe that what I am saying is true. From my old picture and the way I used to live, nobody could believe that I could have so compromised my principles in this alien land. Can anybody imagine that this mild white-collar worker was at one time bold enough to be a Babbar? Nobody here knows me, knows what I am capable of. What a shame it is that we are reduced to living like this. One interlocutor noted specifically the impact of C.H.E. Guevara on his thinking. I will tell you about my friend, who was always a very polite boy who never fought with anybody or did anything wrong. He was a good student. After the Golden Temple event he went into the movement. His family got upset and they were telling him to come home, as he was the only son. But he said, when you used to read in the paper about how brave the other boys were you used to praise them, but now when it comes to your own house you start crying. I won't come home. Consider me as dead. The first action he got involved in was a very big action, in which 8 police officers at a detective training academy were killed. The first gun he ever shot was an AK-47, in that raid. He and his comrades also pulled off an immense bank robbery, and a lot of the money was in his hands. But he didn't misuse a penny of it. He became in fact very pious and spiritual, as he became more involved in the movement. One time he gave me a book by C.H.E. Guevara to read, and that helped me understand what was going on with the militants. I used to wonder how they could survive, how they could succeed. But then I realized that there were other courageous people standing up for the rights of minorities and poor people in other places, too, and sometimes they managed to achieve those. The way my brave friend Lily died, it was horrible. When his body was found he had no teeth, no nails on his hands and feet, and his chest was entirely